34 years may just be enough.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Good evening on this President's Day. I have no presidents for you, but I have, I think, a pretty fascinating conversation, and he may be in the top 5 easiest interviews that I do. Head coach Tim OShea from Bryant University. Of course, we're talking basketball because he's just easy to get along with and has stories, and now he's got a lot on his mind as he is retiring from his position as head coach at Bryant after a long, long run. Glad to have you aboard. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on over the course of the weekend that we will try to tackle over the course of this week. We've got a state senator who has been indicted on some pretty provocative charges. We've got a president who's having an unusually high tweeting response to the FBI and mixing this tragedy in Florida. We've got developments on that. We've got a lot going on at the State House, so it's going to be a busy week coming up. But today we're just going to chill a little bit. As you know, I'm nothing but a dumb jock anyway, and I love talking sports. And I've followed Tim OShea's career, and he's not a stranger to this program. He's been a guest prior, and he's got a lot of insight, not only on what his own program has been doing, but the school and college basketball in general, because it looks like there's rumors out there that the college basketball industry, could be heading for some tumult here. So we'll talk about that this evening. Anyway, here was the headline the other day as Tim bid adieu formally. He's still coaching because they still have some games left. Here's some of what he had to say that afternoon.
I mean, basketball-wise, going to the, at Ohio, going to the NCAA tournament, almost beating Florida, winning at North Carolina, here beating Boston College. We beat a Lehigh team with the kid McCullum, who's now one of the best players in the NBA. But more than anything, honestly, it's the relationships I've formed with these kids and hearing back from them years later and, getting invited to their weddings, knowing that they're doing well in life. That is by far the greatest satisfaction I take from coaching.
And one of the things you take no satisfaction out of is an 11-hour bus ride on the last trip.
Yeah, that's true.
What you just got back from. Probably gave you a lot of time to, confirm your decision from last week? Welcome, by the way.
Dan. No,
and congratulations on a wonderful, wonderful run.
Well, what's nice to say is that since I made this decision, I really started talking to Bill Smith in sometime in early January.
Director
I haven't had a moment, not a nanosecond, where I said this isn't the right decision for me. It's sort of an inner voice saying it's time. And that, for a variety of reasons. So, the bus ride, I just said to myself, I'm not going to miss this anymore. And I got to give the bus driver, Kevin, a ton of credit. Those are the worst conditions I think I've ever been in my 34 years of coaching in terms of coming back. We had to go through the mountains up by Altoona.
Where were you coming back from, Mount St. Mary's?
St. Francis of PA, which is in Loretto, Pennsylvania, which is sort of near Altoona, would be the next biggest city. And there's a tremendously long stretch of you're in the middle of nowhere. So even if you wanted to pull over and wait the storm out, there really was nowhere to do that. So the bus driver did a phenomenal job of getting us home safely.
How many trips like that have you had in your career?
Quite a few, especially when I was at Ohio University, because Athens is a beautiful little college town, but it's really not close to anything. So there were a lot of long bus rides in the Mid-American. Not so much in the Northeast Conference, because a lot of the schools, you have Sacred Heart Central down in Connecticut, New York schools. That's the one really long trip, though, down to Loretto, Pennsylvania. It's
not all glamour. The idea that coaches of any kind, on any level, have achieved a fantasy life. Most sports fans would think perhaps that you have, but it's not all.
No, not really. In fact, I was talking to Ed Cooley about this morning because I said, Ed, how you feeling? Because he's down the home stretch, and there's the stress level for coaches. That's probably the biggest change in the last 15, 20 years. It's gotten so much greater. Has to do with the pressure to win, the pressure to get in the NCAA tournament if you're in a school like Providence. All the external media you have now, the advent of Twitter, Facebook, message boards. None of these things existed when I started coaching 34 years ago.
You don't read the message boards, do you?
No, we really don't. I don't know that we have one at Bryant, but we had a pretty tough one at Ohio. And every now and then you'd look at it and say, "Yeah, I got to stay away from that," because it's great when you win, but when you lose, there's always somebody out there taking shots at you, and that's part of coaching, especially in a place like that, small town,
If it makes you
rural
feel any
area.
better, the message boards are pretty prominent in the broadcast business too. And in case anybody wants to know, I don't read them. I stopped reading them 10 years ago because there's nothing. The keyboard courage, or I would say cowardice, of people to mostly anonymously take their online pot shots at anybody of high profile is unfortunately part of the culture that we have to deal with right now.
Well, I think Dean Smith had a great quote years ago. He said, if you listen to too much of the people in the stands, you got to understand pretty soon you'll be sitting with them. And I think that's pretty good advice for a coach. You have to have thick skin. You have to be able to sort of push things aside and compartmentalize during a season, and that's good or bad. And when you're good, things are, the praise is usually too much, and when things aren't going so well, the criticism is usually too much. The truth usually lies somewhere in between.
Tell me what now that you're a week away from your announcement, which, by the way, was very emotional.
Yeah,
you were full from the minute you started to the minute that you finished.
Yeah, it was
better. Are you better?
Oh, 1,000 times. Yeah, that was. It's funny. It overtook me the day before, and I told the players I didn't expect it because it's not a sad time for me at all, but it's emotional. And Billy Reynolds had a good article. He said it's like a piece of your heart. You've done something for 34 years. Coaching is teaching, but it's not teaching in the sense that I said at the press conference, as Dave Gavitt used to say, we take the test with the player. So the relationship, the intensity of that, the ups and downs, the emotions that go into coaching are just that much greater. And so when you finally decide to call something quits after 34 years, it just kind of hit me. It's like getting, you saw, you were there. It just, the emotion of the moment.
It's kind of funny, though, as I was reflecting on your presentation that day last week, and even what you're saying now, part of I don't know if you ever thought on this, it's probably way out of the box for you, but part of what you were saying in terms of the comparison between coaches and teachers, that you have to take the wins and the losses, that you share in the results. I'd like to see the American education system actually have the teachers sharing a little bit more, maybe not duplicate of wins and losses on the scoreboard, but sharing in the wins and the losses in education. Because you actually made a reflection, perhaps not even purposely, on the distinction between the two. Any thought on that?
Well, no, I think that's true. I mean, look, there's accountability issues. There's also, in coaching, every level is different in terms of the talent you can get. Both you and I are good friends with Bob Walsh. He's a good coach up in Maine. There are certain limitations to a program like Maine in terms of the talent you can get. Same thing, it's conference affiliation, it's your facilities, it's all those things that you bring it in. I think teachers would tell you the same thing. If you're teaching at for example, at St. George's or Portsmouth Abbey, you're getting a certain caliber student to begin with, versus if you're teaching, I don't want to name any schools, or sort of. So I think sometimes when you see kids struggle academically, it's not necessarily a reflection of the teachers. There's a lot more that goes into it. It's the home environment. I think studies show that the educational level of parents has a lot to do with the educational success of kids. So, it's not that simple. But I agree, the whole accountability issue, how do you figure that out? You know what? If there was a simple answer, somebody would have already been doing it.
Well, you definitely pick your classroom as a coach, no doubt. And speaking of the classroom, I think one of the challenges you have at Bryant as well, which is a good challenge, is that there's academic standards. And that school, what that school has done in the last 20 years, I mean, it's been around a lot longer than that, but what it's done in the last 20 years with Ron Makeley's leadership and just the growth of that place is really quite fascinating.
Well, in my 10 years, if you look at the physical plant now versus then, it's just amazing. It's fair to say, I look at Ron Makeley as a secular Donald Monin. Don Monin was the president that really transformed Boston College. He was a Jesuit, did an amazing job. BC was almost on the brink. That's where I went to school. My daughter's there now, and now it's got a $1 billion endowment, and it's one of the most competitive schools in the country to get into. I think if you look at what Ron Makeley has done at Bryant, it's the same thing. And it's interesting. He told me when we initially talked about the job 10 years ago, one of his things that was guiding him in going to Division I was a small book that Father Monin had put out at Boston College and talked about the power of Division I athletics in terms of increasing the profile of a university. And that was one of the incentives for going to Division I, And back then also Dave Gavitt was on the Board of Trustees, and he was influential in saying it could be done and it was possible. So it's interesting when I look at those two leaders, Father Monin, who I actually got to know fairly well when I was at Boston College, not only as an undergrad but as a coach there, and I look at what Ron has done at Bryant, I see a lot of similarities.
We'll talk a little bit about that atmosphere, and we'll talk about what coaches learned about kids over 34 years, whether they've evolved or remain the same. And then I want to ask you about what's going on with college basketball in general, because there's some uncomfortable rumblings out there. We'll be right back. Bryant and Brown. I think that was this year. It's actually at that game. It was a good battle. I often try to remind people that while there's a lot of attention on Providence College and the University of Rhode Island, especially in the last couple of years with their NCAA tournament status, that the basketball in the Northeast Conference, which Bryant plays, and the Ivy League, where Brown plays, they are not your grandfather's leagues anymore.
Not at all.
Your kids are playing above the rim,
Yep.
just like, I mean, the question or the difference, Tim, probably is what? One player, one, as they call, one big, maybe,
No.
What is it?
Well, the quality of basketball is very good, but I think that the difference usually is size and athleticism as you move up the food chain in college basketball, because from a recruiting standpoint, the schools that have the big-time facilities, the practice facilities, they tend to do the best in the recruiting process. And so at a school like Bryant, you can get a really good player. The difference between him and maybe a kid starring at Providence is your guy is 6'1" and their guy is 6'5" or 6'6". And so there is sort of a pecking order to recruiting. And then the key at a school like Bryant is to find those hidden gems and see if you can develop them over time. And an issue I never had to deal with, but is becoming more and more prevalent in schools like the Northeast Conference and the one-bid conferences, is retention. In other words, if a kid does really well, we had a situation in our conference last year, well, a number of very good players took that opportunity to move to a bigger conference. So that is an issue that wasn't around a few years ago, that's sort of come into play now a little bit for schools like Bryant.
And now they're talking about, as long as you've got a good academic standing, letting kids transfer without having to wait a year.
That definitely,
is that going to create havoc?
It definitely was a huge part of my decision, I'll be honest with you, because I do think that's coming down the line, because I think university presidents are really afraid of our student athletes being designated student employees, and what that would mean in terms of workman's compensation, salary, and other benefits. Because it was remember the court case with Northwestern a few years ago? That issue hasn't gone away. And so if a student athlete
That court case was a football-generated court case, which had to do with scholarship and paying athletes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, trying to say, are they employees or are they student athletes? And if you do not allow student athletes the same right as any other student, my daughter's at Boston College, if she's not happy, she can transfer and go anywhere she wants. Right now, we restrict football and Division I basketball players from doing that without having to sit out a year. And there's a good reason for that 1 year sit out. There's a lot of good reasons for it, but that is definitely at issue right now. And if you go to a model where student athletes can transfer and be eligible right away, the unintended consequence of that, I think, is going to be graduation rates will go down. Kids, sometimes in athletics, you have to fight through a tough phase. Not everybody has success right away. But they're going to have a number of kids, as soon as things don't quite work out the way they want, that's going to be leverage. They're going to say to their coach, well, look, if I don't get more playing time or I don't like my situation, they leave, they're eligible right away. You could be in a situation where you're rebuilding a team every year because of this basically free agency that could be created out of this rule change.
Well, since we're talking about rule changes and let me jump ahead. Kev, throw me a headline here from a Twitter feed we looked at. Pete Damel, who is pretty prominent scribe for collegiate athletics, is predicting, if I'm not mistaken, I read the article, dozens of institutions that might get jammed up in a college basketball scandal.
Sure.
I mean, I know you're running a clean program.
Right.
I have no evidence that any program here in Rhode Island has not been running a clean program, although it's not like I'm an investigator, but my instinct is Cooley and Hurley and Martin and OShea were running clean programs. But it's crazy out there. What do you think's coming down?
My sense, I don't have any inside information, I'm going to predict most of this is going to be centered around the major sneaker companies that fund grassroots programs, which is basically they fund AAU teams. that try to get the best players in the country wearing Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, what have you. And the fact that those programs are incentivized to influence those best players to attend schools that are wearing that brand. And there's a huge investment at the grassroots level. Millions and millions of dollars are funneled into those programs. So it would not be shocking to find out that there was a concerted effort, depending on the sneaker company, to influence kids to certain programs. And I think that's what you see with the Louisville case. What's come out so far is that there were Adidas representatives involved in trying to influence the college decision. I think the kid's name was Bowen. And so I don't think anybody's going to be surprised, and I think that's probably what you're looking at. I don't think it's going to be agents so much. I think it's going to be mainly involving the major sneaker companies in their grassroots programs.
Well, you obviously have a lot of instinct on it, so what's the scuttle in the coaching industry that everybody kind of knows who's doing what, and you have to make aggressive decisions not to get into that game, or is it that you're not being sought out at this level?
Well, it certainly doesn't affect Bryant. We're not at a level where we're, because of the conference we're in and our facility and all that, we're not in the level where we would be dealing with top 100 players. And you got to understand in basketball, the value of one really, really great player, the one and done so-called player. The kid is good enough probably to go from high school to the NBA, but he's got to spend a year in college. Those guys can win you a national championship. And so the value of that to the institution he goes to, but also to the sneaker company, is significant. So it doesn't shock me, given the salary some coaches are making at the highest level and the pressure to win at that level, that people would be doing everything they can to influence that decision, including some things that definitely violate NCAA rules.
You mentioned your conference and your decision. Your conference is defined as what, a low mid-major conference?
Well, we're low major. I mean, it's a good basketball. I mean,
Great basketball.
It's quality basketball, but in terms of, if you were to look at budgets of our 10 members, and you'd look at some other factors that define where you are as a conference, TV and all, et cetera, you would say we're a low major conference. A good conference, but low major.
And you mentioned facility. Listen, I know that there's always the chatter in the basketball community that it's nothing more than a big high school gym at Bryant. I'll tell you, when you had that streak and you were running like crazy, it was one of the toughest places in the country to play. When those black and white T-shirts that the kids were wearing, and they're screaming "Ron Bigley," and the whole place is going nuts, and I wouldn't want him to play there.
No. Look, Bryant has done an incredible job with their facilities. We have a strength and conditioning center that an NFL team could call home. The indoor practice facility accommodated all those winter sports that had nowhere to go, plus really enhanced the intramural program. The new academic center is off the charts. It's one of the best buildings in the country. So there's been a list of priorities that have followed, and I think they're going to do some significant upgrades to the Chase Athletic Center, at least they're on the books for this summer. They're going to do some chairback seating, new locker rooms for men's and women's basketball, so they're getting there. And I agree with you. When it's packed, great environment.
Yeah.
Again, you have to embrace who you are, and I've always thought we had a great education to sell, great people. We've had some very good players, and we've had some good teams, so you can get it done. But again, the biggest factor, I think, facing what I call the one-bid conferences, and there are a lot of them. The Ivy League's one, America East is one.
Where your champion in the tournament goes to the NCAA.
Well, that is going to be this transfer issue. I see it as the biggest issue coming down the pike, in the sense that, let's go back to when the Naval Academy had David Robinson. With that rule in place, would he have stayed if he could have gone down to the University of Maryland and played right away? I don't know. It's a good question. Or the kid McCollum at Lehigh, first-round pick, great player in the NBA. If he knew he didn't have to sit out a year, because that's the current rule, and could transfer right away and be eligible, I don't know.
What's next for the coach next? Only a few minutes left with Coach Tim OShea, who last week announced his retirement after 34 years in the coaching business. You have a couple of games left. I was going to ask about how the kids have changed. Give me a minute on how the kids have changed, if they have at all.
Well, I think what's really changed, the most dramatic change, is the new forms of communication. Obviously, when I started, cell phones didn't exist. Twitter didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist. Instagram, all these things that these kids spent a tremendous amount of time on. So I think it changes the kids. I mean, just go to any cafeteria. I'm not just talking basketball players, I'm talking students in general. I can remember going to the cafeteria. There was a lot of noise. It was always noisy. Now you go to a student, a cafeteria at a university. It's very quiet because everybody's got their face in their phone, their iPad. It's a different world, and I think that does change the dynamics of coaching, where kids can go online and create a certain persona about themselves, be it by Twitter or Facebook or what have you. So I think at the core, kids are still basically the same. When we're talking sports, they want to win, they love the sport, but I think they have a lot more distractions coming at them through all these new media, I would call it. So it's new to me, at least.
Sure, no. Believe me, we've done plenty of shows and plenty of conversation about the challenge of the digital world. The most, I don't know, compelling moments you think you've had in the 3.5 decades? Well, I mean, I only got a few minutes, so how the hell do you answer that question?
Well, I'll answer quickly. I can think of a couple things. The 13 great years with Al Skinner. We beat Purdue and Glenn Robinson down at URI. Then we go up to Boston College. We have one of the greatest turnarounds of all time. We go from, I think, like 200 in the RPI, that's the thing that rates you as a team, to number 3. Go from 12 wins to 27, win the Big East. That was great. My first year at Ohio, never forget, I scheduled North Carolina. Al Skinner calls me up, tells me what a bad idea that is. And then we go on the road and we beat him, which was, at the time, I really didn't appreciate it, but looking back, what a great moment. 2005, my team comes back from 19 down in the MAC championship game, tip in with a half second to go, and we make the NCAA tournament and almost beat Florida. And then my last season at Ohio was kind of exciting. I played for Gary Williams, who was a great coach at Boston College and later Maryland, and we beat Maryland on the road. Just one of those great memories to see your old college coach, and thought he was going to yell at me, but he was actually very nice during the handshake line. And then I get to Bryant. We went through that enormous struggle going from Division II to Division I, which is incredibly difficult. Maybe if I had known how hard that was going to be, I might not have opted to come, but I'm glad I did. And then we had some great seasons. Beating Boston College, which was always a big moment for a school. At that time, I said, the biggest rival to Bryant prior to that was probably Bentley. And here we are beating Boston College. That was a great moment. And then my nephew, that was a thrill for me to coach my nephew, Joe, who was named after my father. I have a daughter, but I don't have a son. And he hit that shot, I don't know if you remember, against Sacred Heart. Just one of those crazy shots that you get once in a lifetime to force a game into double overtime, which we won. So a lot of great memories. But at the end of the day, as I've said many times, the best part right now, the last week or so, or all the messages I've gotten from parents, former players, managers, basically saying they had a good experience, that you made a difference in their lives. And there's nothing better.
Well, I do have this one image of Tim OShea on the sidelines. And it's like this. I mean, you probably have a lot of video. Like this.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll only be when you miss a putt now.
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe you won't be walking around like this.
Yeah,
I know you're going to play a lot of golf, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I love golf in Ireland. That's my favorite place to play. I got a friend that has a house and a nice course there. And, I'm fortunate. I live in Newport.
Are you retiring, flat out?
No, I'm retiring from coaching.
That's it.
Yes, I'm not. Some people say, I'm not going to a nursing home.
Good.
It's not like Fredo.
You're my age. I don't want to hear about this.
It's not like Fredo and the Godfather going out for a little boat ride. I've got a lot of things to do.
So you don't have to say, I'm smart. Well, we know you are. Tim, congratulations on a great run.
Thanks, Dan.
And don't be a stranger.
Yep.
All right. Tim OShea, 34 years at Bryant University. Well, 34 years in coaching.
34.
All those at Bryant University. All right, final word when we come back. A lot of turbulence on the Providence City Council and in Democratic politics in the city in general. The president of the City Council in Providence, David Salvatore, will be my guest tomorrow night right here. Lots to cover and some, bubbling up problems at the State House too. You have a great night, and we'll be back here tomorrow evening. I'll see you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.